You have recently come up with the 10 approaches in your newsletter. So, would you quickly run through this?
So these 10 approaches are very fundamental in nature. They start ask you to question things. It asks you to challenge dogma, stereotypes, archetypes, methods that have been practiced. Why are we looking at the same Maslow's triangle? Why are we looking at creating a building with beautiful facade and it is not creating harmony for me when I'm residing inside? Why am I not looking at purpose? I'm only looking at functionality of products and services and brands and organizations and houses and whatnots. Why can't we move from functionality to purpose? Purpose guides us, it enables us. Functionality essentially would mean you will be keep modifying, tinkering with the same old product. It will not give you something fundamentally new, right? Uh, can we shift from objects to the core of it, the subject? So if you look at these 10 approaches will give you amazing things. Like I was really annoyed by people saying that there's so much wastage, so much wastage, so much wastage. And we are throwing, there is so much garbage. But nobody's looking at why are we throwing? We are throwing because the product has not evolved or it has served its apparent purpose. As a human, as a user, I have evolved, but the product does not. And then I throw it away because it has no purpose left in my life. So one of the approaches talks about, can the product evolve along with the user? Can I add to it? Can I remove things and it keeps evolving? And if it keeps evolving, you don't have to throw it. Like leather evolves, wood evolves. Can we look at collapse, entropy, destruction in a positive manner? Why get worried only saying that, oh, destruction is bad, collapse is bad? The second law of thermodynamics says that everything is going to collapse eventually. We are putting energy to keep it in equilibrium, right? So second law of thermodynamics talks about entropy. Can we use entropy for something good rather than putting energy to maintain it and then throw it away eventually? So these are what these 10 approaches are. These 10 approaches are thought provoking. It pushes you to think. It enables you to look at approaches and create innovation.
Something that really fascinates us is innovation that triggers a lasting change for a sustainable future. The guest that we have with us today believes in the power of design that can bring about this shift. He is Shekhar Badve, the founder director of Locus Design, a leading strategy and design company. Being passionate about innovation, he holds 20 years of diverse experience in strategic design, brand transformation, and design research. In this conversation, he goes beyond the concepts of harmony and entropy and explains the true purpose and thinking that young designers should implement. Trust me, this is a fulfilling episode and will open up your minds in many ways, not only about design, but about life in general. So keep listening.
So first of all, I welcome you, sir, to our Rundown podcast series, and it's our absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. And I'm equally glad and happy to be here.
So before we begin the actual conversation, I would like to ask you how are you and how was the lockdown and how has this whole COVID scenario treated you so far?
So far so good. We've been good. Family's been good. But recently I've tested positive and I'm currently quarantined. So this is, but yes, just about to get over. Nothing serious, nothing worrisome, no symptoms. So all good. But it's been a super exciting 1 year to learn and understand what happens to people and us and how the nation behaves. It's good
I
fun
hope you
so
get
far.
well soon.
Yes, another
I
3 days to go, and probably I'll be out.
Yes. I hope you do well soon and your family is safe. So
Thank you.
like design students like us and professionals. I'm sure we know you already, but for the rest of the audience, I would like you to briefly introduce yourself in your own words?
So briefly is good. So I'm Shekhar Badve, and I'm a postgraduate of NID Ahmedabad. I did my specialization in industrial design. I'm from the 1998 batch of NID, and prior to that, I did engineering in tool design and worked for a couple of years before going to NID. And since NID, from day one of graduation, I co-started Locus Design with a friend of mine in Pune, and it's been fantastic 19 years, and looking forward to much more excitement and much more challenges that we would love to deal with. So that's probably briefest possible conversation as an introduction.
That is wonderful, sir. And you're definitely an inspiration for us. From being a product designer to leading a successful design company, you've come a long way. And when did you figure out your passion and what's your story basically? When did you figure out that this is what you want to do in life?
Oh my God, I'm probably the most confused soul in this whole world. But I think I was in 11th, and there were no channels, and there were no uh, Netflix, and there was no nothing really besides Doordarshan. And Doordarshan, very interestingly, used to play at 1 o'clock in the afternoon for 1 hour. There used to be a program called the UGC's whatever 1 hour session. So UGC was University Grants Commission's program. So one day I was having lunch with my mom, and there comes a film on NID, and this was 11th afternoon, a leisure lunch, college time, and then I got to see this film, and I was really excited, saying that this is the place I want to go, and that's the place I went. Fortunately, and they selected me fortunately to be in that place, and that was a life changing event. But that was the moment when I thought that this is a place that will I would love to be, and that film changed the way I looked at things. But yes, of course, I did not go to the undergrad program. I had told my mama to get the entrance exam forms, which his friend was supposed to send from Ahmedabad, which came 2 months late after the exam got over. And then, unfortunately, I had to spend time doing unnecessary engineering stuff, and then eventually work for a couple of years, and then all over back to NID. So that's the background of how I got to know about NID and how did I manage to go there. Quite a crazy thing.
I'm sure we are continuously figuring out. Nobody has it all sorted. But it is really motivational that you built your career around your interest, which a lot of people don't figure out even later in life. Talking about career, my next question to you is how did Locus Design come into existence and how has it evolved over years?
Bapre. So I distinctly remember in our second year at NID, we used to go over the top of our studios. They're called domes. So there are small domes over the studio. So we used to climb up in the evenings. It was not allowed to go onto the domes, but we used to sneak in onto the domes for a couple of friends, go sit there, and it had a most spectacular view of NID lawns and trees and beautiful setting. So we used to go there and sit and think about what to do after we graduate. And we were anyway postgraduates, and we had worked for a couple of years, so we knew what exactly not to do more than what we knew what we supposed to do. So I think a lot of time went in discussing and brainstorming naively, amateurishly, with friends and one of my partner, who's still my partner, talking about what not to do more than what we can do. We had no clue what we will be able to do, but we knew exactly what not to do. And I think for last 19, 20 years now, we've stuck to that what not to do, and that's something that helped us focus. But that was when we were just about 26, 27, I guess. And post which initial couple of years were very tough. They are tough because you're starting on your own. Family is screaming at you saying that what's wrong with you guys, why aren't you taking up jobs? We had good job offers, and we would have made a lot of money initially, but that was tough. That was really, at times I feel it was reckless to start on your own, and not knowing what to do. Then you essentially do everything possible because you have to survive. You can't ask for money from home for your survival and your business. And both of us partners, now we are three, of course, all three NID graduates. But we came from middle class families, so asking for help and support in terms of money or anything else was out of question. Anyway, we were postgraduate, we were supposed to take jobs. So those were the struggle initial 3, 4, 5 years, and it was really, really tough. But after which we started focusing in terms of what we were good at, why certain clients came back to us, and those are the realizations that happened. So initially, we used to do product design, graphics, branding, retail stores, architecture, whatever comes to our plate, we used to do. And so we had good set of friends who used to collaborate with us. They still collaborate with us for after 20 years, and so we did a lot of fun projects. But that focus wasn't there initially. And then after a couple of years, we started focusing. Then we realized that packaging design and branding and graphics and strategies where we are good at, and that's where we focused. On the other hand, my partner being a furniture designer, we did a lot of work in retail design work and stores, and that point in time retail design was the biggest thing ever. So that's something that we did. So that was one level of evolution. The newest level of innovation and evolution that is happening with us is primarily in terms of strategy. So we would want to collaborate and not necessarily always design. We might want to work with better designers, greater designers, and we are very clear, pragmatic about this, saying that whoever is good, we should collaborate. And the world is about collaboration today and tomorrow for sure. So we collaborate a lot. We do the top thinking part very well, and that is where our strength is. We are very good at complexity management. We are very good at solving complex problems and what the client is stuck with, and hence we get very easy walking into the boardrooms. And then the CEOs and the top CXO level people are very comfortable talking to us because we understand complexity, challenges, business, brand, etc. And then we come out taking this large project uh, and then collaborating with variety of people to solve these problems. So we are not hell bent on saying that, oh, if I am the design company, I will do everything in the world possible. So that's naive in today's world. You rather work with like-minded, great people. You get to learn, you get to offer much better. So that's where we are, and we do a lot of service design, strategy projects, which involves doing the entire value chain rather than only doing one bit, which could be the logo, the branding, or the packaging, or the retail. Now we get to do the whole thing. So that's been the evolution so far, and I think because of the way we were in terms of continuously experimenting and risk takers that we were and we are, I think we got to explore a lot, got to know ourselves better, and I think we are far better positioned now in in our own capacities, in our own heads, and we have no confusion whatsoever. So I think all these years were great to resolve the confusion. There's this thing about you coming from an ID, you have this baggage saying that if you are this designer, then you have to be that designer only. No, the world is changing dramatically, and I believe each one of us have to understand their own core strength rather than getting typecasted or like pigeonholes. You're in this pigeonhole and you remain in that pigeonhole forever. That's not needed. Who decides this? I will decide it for myself. And we have no qualms saying that, oh, you are a product designer doing branding. So what? I'm not even doing branding now. I'm doing strategy. And from strategy, we're doing service design. And that is probably where our strength is. And this is why a couple of years, probably a decade gone into getting rid of this baggage, and another decade of trying to evolve out of that baggage and finding yourself. I could put it like this as a journey.
Wonderful, sir. You very well put it. It's beautiful. And I also feel that collaboration brings out the best out of everyone. So today the world is all about collaboration, like you said. So while evolving, also you might have faced a lot of challenges during the process. So I want to ask you, where did you derive the inspiration to constantly innovate? And even today, you are striving for betterment and change. So where do you really get that inspiration from?
I'll cut the journey into two parts. The first part, there was inspiration to survive and inspiration to get one lunch or dinner on the plate. Those were the initial days. So we had no choice but to do things. And I'm very very clear in terms of why we did what we did then. So those were the survival years, and to have and I distinctly remember for almost a year and a half, me and my partner, we had only one choice: either lunch or dinner, and that's the only money we used to make. So for 1.5 years, we did not have lunch. It was only chai and some friends who would come and feed us if possible, any point in time. But dinner is something that we used to save to, whatever, 20, 30 rupees. Pune was a economic place then. You don't have to spend thousands of rupees nowadays, like nowadays. But so that was the inspiration initially. Subsequently, there was always this hunger of doing something new and experimenting. I think we were mad experimenters. We've burnt our fingers, we've lost a lot of money, but we kept on experimenting. And I think this experimentation has helped us realize who we are way faster than most designers get to know themselves, or they are not able to get out of that cocoon. They're not able to look at larger challenges. So let's say if I'm a designer, I will only keep doing design. I will not go up and above and see how design contributes to the economy or contributes to the strategy or people or humans. So I think that was another level of inspiration or the DNA that we have as an organization and as individuals also. But larger belief or larger thing that we valued for ourselves and that it kept on inspiring us is that I still remember those days on the NID domes. I was telling you uh, what not to do, and we know exactly what not to do, and also we know now that what are we supposed to do. So this inspiration comes from not necessarily only designers and design field. We look at inspiration from physics to chemistry to sciences to humans to sociology to technology, and we try and see where is this world evolving and what is it that I would want to do new, where is the challenge. And I remember every project that used to come to us, we used to always look for challenges in that project, and we used to create our own challenges, go back to the client saying that this is how we see your project, this is how we see your product, or this is how we see your market. And the client used to always be amazed to know that oh, we've gone over and above only doing what he had asked us, but gone out and looked for something even more challenging and come back to him saying that this is what could be done. So inspiration, not from the traditional things, not from designers always, some designers of course, uh, but largely from lot of other things that, and we read a lot, I read a lot. So reading also helps you levelize yourself, you understand that, oh my god, I don't know so much, and there is so much to learn and there's so much to gain. So all of these things add to your character. All of these things bring something totally new to you. And these challenges and always continuously digging for challenges and innovation and stuff like this always helps. So to conclude or to put it into a nutshell, reading, looking at things, diverse things, look at things horizontally. If you are in a design discipline, don't only keep looking at designers and design. There's so much to look at elsewhere and get inspirations from. So architecture, philosophy, art, culture, technology, all of these things make you, and hence inspirations come from various situations, various things. And in the design field, you have to create your own inspiration. Otherwise, after 20 years, what else are you going to do? It's the same old thing if you're looking at it like that. But if you look at it differently, if you have different approaches to look at the same stuff, it becomes super exciting.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful. As I talk to you, I sense a deeper purpose in your the work that you're doing. And on the similar lines, and again, this is something I've also heard in your TED talk. You say that brands should align their actions with their purpose they wish to achieve. So, while you say this, what are the areas you think they should be focusing on?
Oh man. I have to put it into one word. I would say harmony. Are we in harmony? I'll first explain what harmony means, and then probably you don't or may not need an explanation or an example for harmony. So harmony could be harmony with yourself. Is your body in harmony? Is your mind in harmony? Is your actions and work and your thoughts in harmony? Are the products around you making you harmonious? Are they distracting you? Are they troubling you? Are they taking you away from harmony? Now, harmony could be body, mind, that is physical, psychological, emotional, social, cultural, okay, ecological. All these things play a system around you, and are you in harmony then? So, a brand or an organization or a product or design for that matter needs to always look for these things. That whatever, if I'm designing something, if I'm creating something, and I'm not saying this is only a domain of designers. It could be people who are inventing technologies, people who are creating furniture, people who are creating, let's say, homes or offices. So architects also traditionally used to look at harmony, harmony with nature, harmony with seasons, harmony with your own body, harmony with your personality. So I feel this is the greatest possibility, greatest innovation approach. If we only concentrate on harmony, there will be so many problems, so many entropies that could be reduced. And that's the greatest opportunity for any thinking person. And I'm not saying designer only. Any thinking person, any person who is in the profession of thinking or doing consciously has this possibility that if they look at harmony, and if harmony becomes the purpose, then you've got phenomenal possibilities for innovation. Just imagine what all can be done. The chair that you are sitting on and I'm sitting on is not creating harmony for my body. My body is not supposed to sit for hours. I'm only allowed to sit, let's say, as physiologically for a couple of minutes or hour, but we sit on the chair for 14, 15, 16, or whatever number of hours, creating a sedentary lifestyle or a posture which is not good, which is not in harmony with our own body, resulting into postural problems on one end and creating sedentary lifestyle psychosomatic diseases like diabetes and other chronic problems on the other end of the spectrum. This is only because our body is not in harmony. And the chair is responsible. Now, the chair's designer is responsible because the designer never thought about not designing a chair but designing the work itself. So why keep tinkering with the chair? The chair has no further evolution to get the body in harmony. So hence you need a very, very strong purpose. Once you have a stronger purpose of this quality and this order or this stature, which is, let's say, harmony, then you will start thinking, and that is where the future lies. That is where the innovation is needed. Otherwise, we will keep tinkering with diabetes on one end and furniture design on the other end. And we are tinkering. I'm using this word, a harsh word, tinkering. So That is where I come from, and this is where the future is. This is how we can build something totally new. Otherwise, keep tinkering, no problems. Make the chair beautiful, make the guy more vulnerable.
So I understand you. Since I'm an architecture student, I understand what harmony actually means, and also sustainability is a need of art. And where you have recently come up with the 10 approaches in your newsletter. So would you quickly run through this?
So I'll give you a couple of them. All 10, of course, are available on all my social media handles. You guys can look up uh, and sign up, and you will get to read much more in depth than. Unfortunately, we have this limited time here. The background was very interesting. So I teach at various management and design and art schools across the country, and I used to speak to students and colleagues and faculties and etc. And I used to ask only one question, saying that, "What is the future that you want for yourself?" And 99% of the times, people used to talk about materialistic things. I want this, I want that. But nobody was able to write or say one sentence that said that this is the future that I look forward to. This is the future I want for myself, or this is the future I collectively want for everybody. And if this was the situation, and this really put me into a situation saying that if this is how the best of the students who got through these great institutions are not able to think, they don't even want to think at times, why are we blaming government of India that they're not making my life amazing? Why they're not creating a beautiful future for me? Because we ourselves do not know what it is. And if we do not know, the government of course has so much other worries and other things to take care of, that they don't have the time for you. So I can't be blaming government of India to not do something great always, if the best of the thinkers and best of the designers and best of the talent cannot think. So this is where it started. So I said that let me do something about this. And hence I put these approaches over a number of years. I tried to see what will help people think. So my principal problem, fundamental issue was that people were not thinking. One. Secondly, once they start thinking, most of them got stuck saying that now where to think, what are the approaches? And hence I put these 10 approaches together, so that if you pick up any, and you will find great possibilities with it. All right, so these 10 are powerful. They have their own great depth, and I urge that each one of you use this somewhere or the other, and it'll make me the most happiest person in the world, that at least some people have started thinking and using it. So these 10 approaches are very fundamental in nature. They start ask you to question things. It asks you to challenge dogma, stereotypes, archetypes, methods that have been practiced. Why are we looking at the same Maslow's triangle? Why are we looking at creating a building with beautiful facade and it is not creating harmony for me when I'm residing inside? Why am I not looking at purpose? I'm only looking at functionality of products and services and brands and organizations and houses and whatnots. Why can't we move from functionality to purpose? Purpose guides us, it enables us. Functionality essentially would mean you will be keep modifying, tinkering with the same old product. It will not give you something fundamentally new, right? Uh, can we shift from objects to the core of it, the subject? The subject of the chair is to make you sit, but nobody challenges the fundamental subject, saying that body is not in harmony and it cannot sit for so long. As I said, on one end, chair is creating postural problems to the extreme of sedentary lifestyle diseases like diabetes. And still we are stuck with doing the chair right, but we're not questioning how can I change the work itself. So if you look at these 10 approaches will give you amazing things. Like I was really annoyed by people saying that there's so much wastage, so much wastage, so much wastage, and we are throwing, there is so much garbage. And there were so many posts last year about people throwing plastics and whatnots into the sea. But nobody's looking at why are we throwing. We are throwing because the product has not evolved, or it has served its apparent purpose. As a human, as a user, I have evolved, but the product does not. And then I throw it away because it has no purpose left in my life. So one of the approaches talks about, can the product evolve along with the user? Can I add to it? Can I remove things and it keeps evolving? And if it keeps evolving, you don't have to throw it. The way you did not throw few things that in your house, for years you've maintained them. Why? Because there's some nostalgic value, there is some emotional connect, or the product has evolved. Like leather evolves, wood evolves. Can we look at collapse, entropy, destruction in a positive manner? Why get worried only saying that, oh, destruction is bad, collapse is bad? The second law of thermodynamics says that everything is going to collapse eventually. We are putting energy to keep it in equilibrium, right? So second law of thermodynamics talks about entropy. Can we use entropy for something good rather than putting energy to maintain it and then throw it away eventually? So these are what these 10 approaches are. These 10 approaches are thought provoking. It pushes you to think. It enables you to look at approaches and create innovation. So it comes out of a lot of my angst and frustration and people only talking and not doing something. So hence I said, let me create something. So I created a booklet. This booklet was sent to 5 6,000 and some 14 15,000 people on LinkedIn by me saying that use this, look at these approaches, use them, do something phenomenal in this world. We have been given this best machine which sits here, right? So that is where these 10 approaches come from.
Yeah, it's wonderful, sir. And we will try to inculcate those 10 approaches in our design process. And I somewhere think that change is generally associated with risks and the some of the bad things in society, even today. So, very few people generally tend to take risks and move ahead and innovate. And also, talking about the evolution that you mentioned, so how do you think has the COVID scenario affected the design strategies of brands, or how should they generally affect after this what we faced today?
So two things have happened. One thing is that a lot of technology got adopted and adapted very fast. So otherwise, it would have taken years and decades for adaptation and adoption. So that's one thing that is on the good side. It has happened. On the other side, what brands and organizations should look at is, what do I do with this great power that I have now, right? Where is the purpose? What is it that I would want to do with this, and how do these two things come together to, let's say, create harmony for that matter? How do I identify what is the core subject? How do I change the world positively? How do I ensure that people don't throw? So these are the kinds of things that brands should look at for newer things, innovation, and etc. And not only brands, organizations, individuals, and government for that matter. I work extensively with government also, and this is where we discuss these kinds of things. So that's one aspect. Second is a lot of habits have changed, a lot of realizations have happened because of COVID and the pandemic and the whatever so-called and otherwise associated problems. So these realizations have to be used positively. We should not go into the dark saying that, oh, everything is gloomy and dark and bad and horrible. No, it's not. Things will evolve for good provided we think, provided we have these policies in place, we have strategies in place. Only then can this be used. Otherwise, all this learning, all this power of technology, and all this understanding of who we are and what we really love and do and what want will go for a waste. We've also realized that how much ever technology and Netflix and whatever Amazon you give it to people, they are frustrated, bored after 10 15 days. So humans still need very fundamental core things, and there's a great opportunity in core things rather than doing all the fringe world that we've created around us. So these core things need to be identified, they need to be worked upon. These are very fundamental human traits as an animal. So that's where the world can really go towards. The future can be amazing to look at, provided we have policies, strategies, and thinking minds wanting to think, right? So I see it positively. So
So, absolutely. Uh, yeah. I really appreciate and like your ideology that a conscious effort should be put into thinking henceforth. And also, like you are working, you have a multidisciplinary practice. You're working into packaging, museums, strategies, and guiding brands also. So, on a lighter note, I would like to ask you, what is it that you enjoy doing the most out of the various areas that you work on?
so I think it's not about any particular discipline or particular aspect of what we do. I think every project I love to uh, initially think and challenge and question. And I have this nagging great ability of asking questions. So if somebody has this ability to ask questions, I love to interact with that person because questions will lead to answers, and answers that you may or may not know or you may or may not explode. So that's the part that I love in every project that we are involved. The initial bit of thinking, questioning, uh, defining, identifying answers, or furthermore questions to think. So that bit I enjoy, and then the last bit in terms of really translating that into something that is felt by people, or at least by the clients or the consumers or the customers. So these are the two areas that I love to work uh, in all the projects that we have. So I'm a restless person when it comes to uh, thinking and asking questions and have these nagging whys. So people typically, when I have these classes or courses or discussions with my clients or otherwise, they want to engage with me because I have these questions that probably brings clarity to everybody. So that's what I enjoy the most.
So yeah, I think the question asking like tendency is somewhere dying out today in today's generation, even as I notice, and like and your approach is really interesting. So what will be your advice to a beginner who wants to build his or her business around design strategy or consultancy for understanding UX and connecting with potential clients?
First foremost, be very sure why you're doing. Again, I'm starting with a why. What is the purpose that you want whatever your consultancy or your design business for? If you can answer this why, whichever ways you can, simplest possible or the most complex way, whichever ways you can answer, you will have far more clarity. That is one. Secondly, try and define uh, who you are, what is your core strength. And this strength is not coming out of education or any other conditioning that has must have happened to you. This is your core strength from childhood. You are really good at it, and it cannot be drawing or strategy or analysis or 3D visualization. No, all of these are acquired syndromes, I call them. They take you away from who you are fundamentally. So try and define this as early as possible, saying that this is who I am as a person, not as a educated designer or a UX designer. No, all of that is layers which are distracting you from who you are in the core level, right? So try and define that if possible. If these two things happen, you will have far more clarity when you go talk to somebody. Then you are not one of a UX designer amongst 1,000, 10,000, or 1 lakh people who are going and pitching for UX projects. Or you are not another design company in Pune. So Pune has got apparently some 250 design companies. Uh, you're not one of them then. You're very specific. You're very unique, or don't be unique for the reason heck of being unique. But the client or the person in front of you will be able to identify those qualities. And once those qualities mixed with or layered with your design ability, then they know why they are seeking your services. I think this is where maximum uh, dissonance happens. This is where maximum problems happen. This is where you either become too generic or you become so specific that nobody wants you. So you need to have to find this who you are business inherently as a person. You could be a great player, or you could be a great problem solver, or you could be a person who is not petrified by challenges or disasters. You're this guy who will be happy, or you could be one clown of a person who gets people together. And I'm talking about these kinds of strengths, and nobody else will tell you this because everybody is so gung-ho about design without understanding who the person is. So if you have these abilities to get people together layered with design, you go pitch this and you will find your projects, you will find your type of clients who are willing and happy to work with you. So this is first set of things that any person who's wanting to do anything on his own or her own should be able to do this. And this comes out of my own experience. We've spent and wasted, I guess, 12-15 years not realizing who we were and not accepting it, because this design baggage is so heavy to let go of, and it is super exciting, and that's your identity, unfortunately. But you've forgotten who you are as a person, right? So don't worry about this exciting, uh, let's say in my case, NID tag baggage. It doesn't help you. It helps you only open a couple of doors, and that's about it. But the client sees it through because he's much more experienced. And the moment you are so transparent and open to things, and the client or the person opposite you gets to see it, that is where that bonding happens. That is where the relationship happens. Otherwise, you are one design company in 250 others in Pune. Forget India, right? And second thing is that don't start your business with your own money. Try and find a person who has got a lot of money. At least you'll be taken care of, and then you don't have to worry about fundamentals. You can concentrate on who you are and what are you good at. Apply it to design, and please remember this: what you are good at, apply using design to something which is a problem or a challenge or innovation that you wanting to create. Don't start with saying that I am a designer. No, you are this amazing, beautiful, interesting person who has studied design, and that's a very different approach.
That was very, yes, sir. That was a very thought-provoking idea that you mentioned, and like it was really valuable. And there's a lot to learn from your experiences, I feel, as we talk. So, and my final question to you is that all this is like all you talked is about design and finding purpose and identifying our own skills. So, where do you think is the future of design? And what are the innovative advancements that you foresee in upcoming years?
What do I see in terms of the future and the advancements and etc.? I see two things happening very clearly. One, of course, the technology side and the technology domain and the artificial intelligence and Internet of Things and etc. etc. All this is going to go great guns. On the other end, understanding of people, emotions, biochemistry, physiology uh, is going to go great guns, right? So these are two apparently opposing fields. Okay, they're pulling each other. At times, they're coming together. The opportunity lies in bringing them together for a better purpose. Okay, bringing them to hack into human beings or to hack into systems is not a good thing to happen to human beings, right? We will be replaced by AI robots, or we might be, most of the jobs will get wiped out because they are redundant only analysis jobs. So that's not great, but that's going to happen. We cannot stop it. But what we can do as thinkers and designers, and I will say thinkers first and designers later, because designer, that word itself comes with a lot of dogma. All right. So people who can think, and that's where I want to keep it, is that try and see what is the possibility to bridge these two fields or worlds together for something purposeful. Like, let's say harmony, if you keep it as purpose, as an example, technology and biology or human understanding, human psyche, if they can be brought together to create harmony, then there is phenomenal possibility for people who can think, people who can make things happen, right? From policy, strategy to products to services. And then you get to see tremendous design possibilities evolving after all of this has been done. For service design, for experience design, for technological or humanizing technology for humans, etc., etc. These are the great possibilities. But please remember, we need to have our purposes defined really well, not only at an individual level, not at organizational or brand level, but also at the governmental level and country levels. Because if all the countries agree to say that yes, let's bring harmony, then we've got some great future happening. Otherwise, we're going to see a very different level of war, not nuclear, but artificial intelligence war race, right? So I think there's a great possibility. I'm a very optimistic person. I don't like to talk about negative or pessimistic things, but this is where the word of caution is. Try and find the purpose. Purpose has to be large. Try and bring these two worlds together. How technology can be brought to great use for humans, and how humans can use that technology for betterment of the planet. Okay, and not look at it myopically, saying that, oh, this task of mine, shopping on Instagram, has become so easy and I can order my food from the choicest restaurant and the dish that I love. That's the most menial of jobs that AI can do, right? We rather look at something much larger. That's my only suggestion and provocation to all of you guys is.
Thank you, sir. It was very wonderful and intriguing talking to you. And we got a lot to learn from you, and it was a very wonderful talk, I must say. And like, we will try to inculcate whatever you said into our lives, more than design, as you said. So thank you for joining us, and it was a great honor for me to talk to you, and it was a pleasure having you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting.
Congratulations to all of you who made it till the end. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I really hope you liked it. If you did, please leave us a review on our YouTube comment section. And if you come up with any questions while listening to this podcast, you can add a comment on Instagram or YouTube, and we will get back to you and help you as much as possible. You can find us on Instagram or our website by the name arttown.store. So do connect with us. We're truly excited to converse with you.